Hi, everyone. Welcome aboard to our food diversity broadcast or live stream this afternoon, 12 p.m. Pacific, 11, not 11, 12 p.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Mountain Time, 2 p.m. Central Time, and 3 p.m. East Coast Time, and whatever other time zones that are worldwide if you're watching from outside of the United States or the West Coast. In general, my name is Noni. I am here based in San Francisco, California, and I am pretty much the one who founded the whole concept of food diversity. So I'm very excited to have everyone join us and learn more about different types of food and different types of skills associated with food and what we put in our body. And with me, I have the lovely Teresa Rue, who is the co host, my ride or die person for food diversity. And I will allow her to introduce herself before we move forward. So, Teresa?
Hello, Noni. It's a pleasure to be here with you and all of our audience. I love the fact that this is food diversity, fermentation versus preservation. To me, this is just gaining more and more enjoyability. We really appreciate the audience that is joining and is growing. And I'm really excited about this particular episode. As I think everyone knows from anyone who's listened to us before, that we have a great cadence with regarding to our topics. We usually, one or the other of us will suggest something, or it'll be something we're talking about, and we both come up with it together. And I love the fact that our guest today is not only a chef, she creates kitchens and all that, but she also is a friend of mine that I'm really pleased to have a chance to for us to have ladies conversation. Back over to you, Noni.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Teresa, for that introduction. And I'm actually very excited to meet our guest speaker today as well. I got to learn more about her. And the fun thing is that I am actually going to be in a room full of Canadians. I am the only one from the United States. And the other two ladies who are joining us or joining the conversation are going to be from Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. So that's very exciting to me. And then one thing that I want to mention to everyone that it's a housekeeping item, but some of us are having or experiencing some technical lags right now. So if you see a frozen screen or if someone's voice is going in and out, please give us some grace. We're all trying to um, connect with our technologies internationally, if you could say, so we can all be on the same page. And today's topic, as Teresa mentioned, is fermentation and preservation. And that remind the first thing when I thought about the word fermentation was during my trip to South Korea. I went to the kimchi museum over there, and I had four different types of kimchi, and that was the most fascinating experience of my life. And I wish I could go back and eat all of it and be merry. But before I continue blabbing about things, I do want to welcome our guest speaker for today. Her name is Allison Kent, and she will be the one introducing herself. So, Allison, welcome aboard.
Hello, Allison. Welcome to the stage. It is a pleasure to have you here in Vancouver. I feel like we almost are right across the table, and I've actually, for to let everyone know, I have been at Allison's table many a time, and I've always enjoyed not only your food, your presentation company, and drinks. So, if I may, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Oh, I'm so
Let's
sorry. You're on mute right now, Allison.
There you go. Sorry, I
There
thought
we
you were
go.
doing the buttons.
I've
Okay,
just
I got it.
unmuted you,
Got
and I'm
it.
not sure if I'm having technical issues.
You are frozen but looking lovely. And we can still hear you, so it's good.
Okay, cool.
Um,
Welcome.
I've come to a point, I think, at this stage where I've combined decades in architecture with a passion for cooking to be now designing functional and practical kitchens for people that actually cook and love to cook, and for chefs at home. And kind of in that realm right now. And actually, most of my clients are American. So I feel like I'm almost half American at this point. So now it's just a diverse panel.
Nice. That makes sense. Well, you are a bit of an international woman. You are a bit of a global kitchen designer now, because you have been doing work in, I'm not sure if you want to talk about where you have worked or just even traveled, but I do consider you a global citizen.
Thank you. I do travel a lot, and I pretty much always travel for my tummy. I travel for food. I would love to see the kimchi museum in South Korea. That sounds super cool to me. I definitely, when I travel, I'm working on a trip right now to visit my daughter in Bogota. So I go to Colombia quite a bit. But it's like, how can I get more immersed in the food there? How can I learn more about their culture and their culture through their food? And so I kind of tend to travel that way. I don't see so many museums, but if it's a food museum, I'll be there for sure.
I know what you mean. Actually, I'm really excited to go and try kimchi. The first time I really kind of had an experience with kimchi was at the resort, where almost everyone knows my stories begin with at the resort, and it was someone that was cooking it in the staff kitchen, and it was an acquired taste and aroma, but that's just it. Is there's different types, and the museum sounds fantastic. I know, Allison, in terms, it's a bit of a, we're doing a bit of a free flow right at the moment, because I know you have had opportunity to speak with the woman and her husband. In fact, you and I had non-alcoholic mimosas on a Saturday and watched a cooking show from a woman who had bought the cottage of Julia Childs, correct? Speaking of
Correct.
museums.
Yeah, it's a cooking school based in the south of France that I joined back when COVID started. And it was a way to keep myself busy during COVID. And it's called Recipe Kick. And it's a great like online class program. And they encourage a lot of exploration with food, which is something I really love. Like I'm just naturally very curious. I get bored really easily. If there's something new to learn, I get really excited and I get right on it, which I think is how I kind of came upon fermenting. And I've done a lot of pickling and fermenting and food preservation here at home, because I just like, how can I do something different? How can I add a new flavor? How can I, take the kimchi, but now my sister's been freeze drying. So now we can take our kimchi that we pickled and fermented, and then we can make it into a powder that we can add to our eggs, or like it just keeps growing. The world of food is just endless. It's kind of fascinating. I love it.
It really is, isn't it? In fact, that's part of part of the reason that we chose today's topic this way. And again, thank you for coming in and being our guest speaker today. Is you and I do have times where we get to see each other in person and all that as well. Though I do follow your Instagram, and I love not only your posts, it was the post most recently, and it was on lacto fermentation. And I'm not sure if I'm not technologically well enough yet to put the picture of the post, but we'll put it in the comments so people can see, because it was using grapes, was it not?
Yeah, part of being so naturally food curious is also kind of a product of when the grapes grow, they grow, and suddenly you have to pick like, I don't even know what I had, like 16 gallons of grapes all of a sudden. So now what are you going to do? How are you going to process all this food? And so, yeah, some got lacto fermented, some got just frozen, some were made into jams and canned. It's like, what are you going to do with all this food? Well, let's start exploring. And then we get online and we go kind of crazy. I get a bit crazy with it all. But grapes was definitely one when food's in season, like peaches.
Hmm.
We found when you lacto ferment peaches, so lacto fermenting, from what I understand, is basically a salt. You add salt to food and stick it in a bag. It's really quite simple. Um,
Interesting.
and we tried peaches because they were in season. I'm like, how do I preserve some of these peaches? There I have so many last year. This year they're not all that. But they get this effervescence to them and they kind of sparkle, and it's almost like the juice from it is almost like a sparkling cocktail by itself. You don't even have to do anything else to it. It's kind of amazing the products that you can get out of a little bit of experimentation with fermenting.
Absolutely. And the fact that you bring up peaches specifically, I know for us, absolutely. On previous episodes, we've talked about stone fruits globally, but also stone fruits with what's going on in the Pacific Northwest, BC especially. And interestingly enough, for our Australian viewers and counterparts, um, they are set to have possibly the best harvest in something like 20 years of their peaches and stone fruit, because they, at their winter, they've just had this heat wave kick. So anyone that's either in Australia, going to Australia, you may have an overabundance of peaches and stone fruit. And so it's nice to know that doing a fermentation produces, like you say, that sparkling cocktail, because there are definite benefits. The question I wanted to ask you first, though, because with this Instagram post, that's how Noni and I came to not only the idea for this topic and bringing you here. I know that you had done cherry tomatoes, red onions, and mushrooms, and then you're going to do sauerkraut, and you do also on your Instagram or on your social media, you also engage with all of us because you ask us, what else. So what I will do is say to the audience that, please put in the comments if there is anything in particular food wise that you're questioning or thinking about doing for fermentation that you want to ask us about, or things that you have done that you like. My question is, what got you started in fermentation itself? I know you and I, again, we talk, I come from the wine side of life, wine and alcohol. We both love mezcal. And I know that you love food. And like you say, you're intrigued in things. You have a family that you've raised. So feeding them well is important. Traveling and creating your company, the home kitchen, is important. But what kind of spurred your passion and your interest in fermentation? And then we can talk about fermentation versus preservation.
I think again, I just get bored really easily. My son's a chef, and so we follow a lot of the big world's best kind of restaurants. So I was following Noma, and they were doing this huge exploration into fermenting. So I bought the book immediately. The book is 99.8% way over my head. But what I did get out of it was the lacto fermenting pages, which is so easy to do. And it's, as I mentioned, it's essentially just adding a 2% salt by weight to a food, sticking in a vacuum sealed bag, and you're golden for a couple days. It just sits there and ferments and off gases. And it's delicious. But that kind of started me on it. So I know I have a lot more of the book to try to tackle one day when I'm brave enough to do so. For now, that's going to have to do. But there is a lot you can do. I did get a comment actually from my own son on the mushrooms, though. He said you have to be extremely careful doing this with mushrooms because mushrooms are just naturally so dirty and impossible to get 100% clean. And so you're more likely to create botulism in that one, which obviously we don't want to poison anybody. So I'll probably leave that one alone. But the tomatoes, I just take especially when they're in season, which is right now, you can get them cheaper, right?
Yes.
So I'll just take boxes of the little cherry tomatoes, which get so beautifully red, whereas some of the bigger ones, how we get them in the grocery store, they're just not quite as ripe tasting. You don't get as much of the flavor out of them. So I like to use the cherry tomatoes. and I basically just cut them in half so all the juices are exposed. I add 2% salt by weight, and 3 days later, you have this magical, not just the tomatoes themselves, you can separate them. I keep them in the fridge still together, so the liquid and the solid is still together when I keep it in the fridge.
Hmm.
But I'm always adding the tomatoes to my tomato sauces, and it just adds an extra kinda slightly funky little depth to your tomato sauces, which is delicious. But the tomato water is one of the most beautiful tasting things I even know of, because it's
Yes.
just the essence of tomato. Like, you're just getting the tomato, you're not actually getting a watery taste out of it, and I will make cocktails with it. I will make mocktails with it. I will add that also to some of my tomato sauces. I'll just drink that stuff. It is that delicious that you could sit there and just drink it, and it's good for you. Like, it's so healthy. You've done almost nothing to this food, and you've taken it from a certain health quotient to a completely new one with completely new health benefits and everything to it with very little work. Like, it doesn't take a lot.
Absolutely. You bring up so many great points, and definitely there is something so refreshing about tomato water, which if people haven't had a chance to taste or try it, it's especially as we're coming to this, the dog days of summer and all of that, and it's one of my favorite. I wanted to go back over to Noni for a moment, and because I know we have people in the audience, and I know that Noni is you're always a little more phenomenal with regards to the comments, and some of them I may or may not see. Back over to you, Noni.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And thank you, Allison, for the wealth of information that you shared with us. I did want to make sure that we're acknowledging our wonderful listeners and audience members. So Owen says hello. I've never met Owen before, but would love to learn more about Owen. Hi, Leslie. She says hi, Noni. Hi, Teresa. Nice to see you, Leslie, as always. Gabe, I believe this is Gabe's first time attending. He was kind enough to advertise this event for us. And the lovely and fabulous Lisa Vivek, uh, one of the most awesome, amazing individuals on LinkedIn. And then we also have Chietza, who says Happy Thursday, everyone. So just wanted to make sure that they were acknowledged and they were presented in front of everyone. And so, because they're all getting to learn so much about you, Allison, and your skills and your knowledge. So wanted to make sure that everyone gets their um, time on screen. And I will go ahead and pretty much come in between once in a while as soon as people start commenting more, and then continue the flow of the conversation that way. So back over to the two of you.
Thank you, Noni. I did actually want to ask or give you a moment to add anything in terms, because again, I know sometimes our conversations, our topics are ones that you have not only a wealth of information, it either you might have something from North America or something from your time when you lived in the UAE or something from your family and upbringing. And so I'm curious for you, what have you had a lot of fermented foods, or do you? Because I know for me, I'll have kombucha, kefir, but it and shrubs, which I'm looking forward to Allison talking about. But it's still somewhat new, even in my lexicon of food that I love. And is there anything that you have that you've tried or that you've noticed in different countries?
I have not. Most of the time, we made home cooked meal, or not we, but my mom made home cooked meals, and I don't think she ever fermented anything.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe she preserved some stuff, but again, I don't know. I was too young when I came here, so I can't really tell the difference between what is being cooked really or what the definitions of the two terms were. I just ate whatever she cooked or whatever restaurant that we went to. So I don't have any knowledge of that. I apologize.
Which again, the thing that I find is so great about what we do each week is that there's times when I'm learning new aspects about food from around the world. And this is one that I'm a little more familiar with, partly because fermentation is something that it definitely became popular. Um, Allison, correct me if I'm wrong, but it became popular when places like Noma and Copenhagen, and like you say, the chefs, actually the cookbooks, and really David Zilmer, I believe, is kind of, he was so out there with all of it. And we as foodies, especially someone like yourself, you're inquisitive, you have, not only you have a family to feed, just like all of us, you're budget conscious at times, but also when you're traveling, you get spices or you're at different places. And so when you come home, you want to incorporate what you have and maximize what you have in your fridge and pantry. And fermentation, I think, helps doing that, as well as the next part of it, we'll get into what is fermentation versus preservation. But your thoughts, Allison?
Yeah, David Silver, by the way, is Canadian.
Yeah.
Definitely Noma just kind of like brought it out to the every home. I mean, fermenting's been around since the beginning of time as a tool for preservation. I don't think it was necessarily even used for health benefits way, way, way back thousands of years ago when, for example, we still sometimes get in our house fermented tea leaves. Kombucha, I believe, is originally a Chinese preservation method from thousands of years ago. For I can't remember exactly how it came about, but some of these things have been around a long time. It definitely took a restaurant such as Noma with their presence in the food industry, and gaining that top one in the world spot for so many years as they did, to kind of bring fermenting to a cool place, I guess.
Yeah.
But now it's like, oh, Noma's cool. I want to be like Noma. But I think now it's kind of gone beyond that, and you'll find fermented foods in almost any thoughtful restaurant. I'm not going
Yeah.
to say necessarily high end, but somebody who's really thinking through their ingredients and how to use. There's a restaurant that I love in town, Burdock and Co. And she was bringing like wild yeast back from the Yukon to make butters and like really crazy, cool, inventive stuff that you can do with preservation, because you can take something from A and bring it into a new being over here when you're at B. And I think it's just really cool. For me, I just have sometimes when there's a lot of food, there's just a lot of food. Like the grapes will come at once. The apples, only got 2 apple trees, but when the apples are ready, I suddenly have more buckets than I know what to do with of apples. And I got to figure out how to preserve some of it because we can't eat it all in the moment and I don't want to waste it. Blackberries are in season right now and they're free. You don't have to pay $8 at the grocery store for a blackberry. They grow everywhere you look here. And so I've been going out and getting like, 15 32-ounce delis at a time of blackberries. Well, so now what do I do with it all? The blackberries I've done, I have a big, huge batch right now being made into a drinking shrub. So, basically a drinking shrub of apple cider vinegar, which again has all its own amazing health benefits. And I started doing shrubs because my husband and one of my sons was just addicted to pop. And I just can't wrap my head around pop. I can't have it in the house. It grosses me out to no end. So I started substituting their pop with the what do you call that, carbonated water that you get, the gas canisters,
The soda stream.
soda stream with
Yeah.
drinking shrubs. And it's so refreshing and it's actually delicious. And now they love it way more than pop. And you can make incredible flavors with it. When my rhubarb was in season, I just made a whole bunch of rhubarb drinking vinegar and then we add it to the soda stream. And now that's taken over as pop. Plus, it's healthy. And I don't care if they drink an entire jug of it, it's good for you.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a way to let go of some bad habits, maybe too, with food that's actually quite delicious.
It is quite delicious. And I very much agree. And not only that, because the soda streams, when they, and again, around the world, depending on where we are, carbonation of water that we can now easily do in our house, that some people will go out and buy. Like I went and I was looking to buy carbonated water, and then it's lime flavored or lemon or all of that. Not to mention the soda streams, they now have packets that you can add flavoring to. But again, it gets back to the health benefits in terms when we want to eat clean and healthy, and food is medicine. And I do enjoy, and Noni and I, we have a fun time on here with regards to sodas and all of that. And I indulge in a ginger ale, or I know Dr. Pepper or whatever. That being said, when you have a family that you're raising your children and you want them to not only have the best, but like you say, they're growing and they're going to go and drink a liter of something, that it's healthy, and you encourage it because of exactly that. I've had chance to meet your sons, and they are very talented, intelligent, and they need a lot of energy. And so they could eat you out of house and home, I'm sure, as does most families. So I agree with you. Blueberries are another one, like blackberries. I love doing blackberry and basil together. Yeah. Mint is great, but I don't know about you. I find basil has a bit of a higher tolerance for getting bruised. Mint, it can become too bitter too quickly. So I love putting blackberry and basil together.
And it's an easy way to use some waste too, because we had the basil that you buy in the growing basil that you buy at the store, and all the stems were still there. So I cut off all the stems and added it to my blackberry shrub, and they got used for something, and they added flavor. And
nice.
So it was like, it's a good way to use waste sometimes as well. Which is we could do a whole nother chat on how to use all the food waste in your home.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's because that, in a way, the Instagram post that you did when you were fermenting the grapes in itself, doing the lacto fermentation on grapes, then you said you used the grape leaves you made domates.
Yeah, we canned them. So we put them in a citric acid bath, and I properly canned them.
Right.
So that they are now on the shelf, and all year long, if we just want to sit and make a wrapped grape leaf, whatever, you could put meat in it, you could put rice in it, or whatever. My son made a huge batch the other day for dinner a week or two ago. And it's just, it's growing here. It's free food. May as well save it for another day in the winter when we want to sit there and wrap dolmades while we watch Netflix. I don't know. You got to multitask sometimes. Make dinner while you're Netflixing on a weekend.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and I'm not sure where, Miss Noni, there we are. Noni, I don't know because we haven't really talked about Greek food specifically. We haven't even really, now that I think about it, there's not many episodes where we've talked about Mediterranean foods and all of that, because again, as you say, Allison, we could do an entire episode, which I'd be really happy to do actually, on food waste and or how to maximize food for cooking and for fermentation, for preservation, all of the rest. Because again, we're in a world where our money needs to go further for our food. Our money needs to go further for our nutrition and all that. But Noni, I was curious because I always sit in like the dolmades, and that makes me think of, yogurts and just that really Mediterranean food. So that really good, the saganaki with the lemon and all that kind of stuff, and rice or potatoes, which are a really important part of, just all the dishes. And again, being it is what is food diversity, I always do think about, what's going on in the rest of the world with all of it. So in the UAE, Noni, did you find that there was a lot of Mediterranean, like food specifically, Greek type food, or no? Because you and I have talked about different processed foods versus non-processed and all that, but I'm just curious.
In the UAE, we are over 80% of the population is immigrants, and most of them are from the South Asian region. And so a lot of the food that we did have was mostly Greek inspired Arabic food or Arab food. So that
Hmm.
included a lot of hummus and a lot of oils and a lot of blending. Yogurt was there, but then we also, speaking of fermentation, I actually thought about something in South Indian cuisine that we used to also have in the UAE, which is of course present here as well. The dipping sauces that we have in a dish called dosa. I don't know if either of you know of that or not, but they come with three different sauces. I think one of them is a coconut sauce, and then the other is more of a tamarind sauce, and then the other being a lentil uh,
Right.
soup. So I was thinking, is the coconut sauce that they present, would that be fermented or not?
Good question, Allison.
I mean, you can have fermented sauces. I make a fermented habanero hot sauce once or twice a year because we just go through it like crazy. And so basically, your food is fermented and then you puree it into a sauce.
Mhm.
So a lot, I don't know if that one in particular is a fermented sauce, but it is quite easy to make fermented sauces. And again, once it's made, it's in your fridge um, for a year if it lasts that long, because sometimes it's too delicious. But what is happening is it's still alive. So as it's sitting in the fridge, for example, even the fruit shrubs. So the fruit shrubs start with a lot of sugar, but that sugar is degraded into the fermentation process into all the healthy things that you really want because you don't actually want the sugar, but it's eating the sugar, similar to possibly how a wine works. And once you keep staying in the fridge over time, it is still fermenting. Like it's still a live product. It's still growing, it's still developing. And so the longer you keep it, the more flavorful it actually gets, which I do with the hot sauce that I make.
Ooh, when I go to Canada sometime this year,
Yes.
then
We'll have dinner. Okay, I'll start a hot sauce for when that happens. But they're delicious. Like I'll send it back. Actually, I should make one because I'm going back to Bogota, so I'll take my daughter some. But yeah, it's delicious. And what you have when you make your own sauces, and I understand it's a bit of work, and sometimes it costs more than going to the store and just buying a sauce. But you're not putting anything in it you didn't want to be in it as well. So it's like fully natural. It's staying refrigerated. It's excuse me. It's only got the ingredients you want in it. So if I want mine to have a bit of a mango flair, I can add mango. If I want it to have more onion flavor, I can add more onion. Like you get to tailor it to your own taste buds a bit as well. But also I just like to play with food. Play with food forever. It's fun.
Oh,
Nice.
absolutely. I 100% agree. And Teresa, before we go back to you, I do want to mention a few of the comments that came in. For whatever reason, Allison Johnson, I cannot see your comment on StreamYard. So Allison says, I'm grateful for this knowledge. And the lovely Miss Leslie Flowers, or Queen Leslie Flowers, excuse me, Queen Leslie Flowers, uh, shared a couple of things. The first thing was Avglanomo. And the other thing she shared was Uzo and Retsina.
Yes.
Either of those things. So I will allow the two of you to explain that.
Well, the first one, which I won't attempt to pronounce either, is a Greek soup. I was looking it up when I saw the comment come in, and it looks delicious. I mean, I'll eat anything with lemon. Lemon is my go-to ingredient for pretty much everything that happens around here. But lemon and chicken and Greek spices, yes, please. It looks like sometimes it comes as a puree as well. So one thing you can do, this is where fermenting can come in. So you have a recipe that you already love, and so I've not seen this recipe. I'm going to jump to it right now, but I have a feeling this is made with fresh lemon, and it is. So a way to kind of kick it up a notch is to do the same recipe, but incorporate in your preserved lemons. Sorry, my voice suddenly went off. And so then if you are preserving your own lemons, which by the way is delicious as well, you can add them into a dish that you already make where you already love the lemon flavor. But now that dish is going to take on a twist and it's going to have a whole new kind of subtle flavor profile underneath of it. And so if you already love that dish, Leslie, then try doing some of your own preserved lemons. They're really not hard to do. They sit in a jar in the back of your fridge until you need them. And you can just dice them up and add them to something you already love and you're already making anyways. But now it just has a little extra kick and it's got a little bit of extra flavor. You just mentioned lemon sauce, so you could probably do the same thing, anything with lemon in it. Instead, you could add a fermented lemon, preserved lemon. And now you're going to get a few extra health benefits. You're going to get a few new layers to your dishes and feel pretty good about it because you did it and you made it and it's kind of cool. And you're adding extra health benefits. So, I mean, win-win.
Nice. Nice. Which, and that's just it. You're so right in terms, and I know for you, you do cook and experiment with a lot of like citrus. Citrus is so great because it brings acid to the foods and to the, like you say, to the layers and textures as well as the health benefits. So I know whenever my mom or I are feeling a bit under the weather, especially for my mom, there's a Greek restaurant, and the I think they call it penicillin soup in itself, and the broth and the egg lemon and all of that. It's absolutely fantastic. So, and ouzo and retsina, Allison can speak to as well. That ouzo is a an alcohol made with.
Delicious.
It is. It's almost too delicious. I find one can go opa a little too easily. The Italian version is sambuca. The Greek one is ouzo, and retsina. I was actually just talking with someone because Marquee Wine Cellars, where I used to work, they're having a Greek wine tasting on September 7th that I'm attending. And the owner is from Greece. They have probably one of the best selections of wine, of Greek wine, especially in Vancouver. And so we're going to go and taste some really great Greek wines. But retsina, of course, is something that I still will have when I'm having Greek food, when I'm having the spanakopita, the dolmades, all of the rice and the lamb and everything. And retsina is a very old. It's one of the oldest ways of making wine, where they use pine in order to preserve it, which in a way brings us to kind of the next great segment of fermentation versus preservation. Noni, if there's anything you wanted to say before, or Allison, otherwise I thought this would be a great segue into what fermentation versus preservation is and talking about preserved and preserving food.
I mean, I am by no means all knowledgeable in these things. It is such a vast world to be exploring, and there's just so much more to learn about it. But I do a lot of like preserving, whether it's freezing, jamming, pickling, fermenting, whatever. Fermenting is my favorite one because I do love the extra layer of the kind of funky taste. Like I do like it. And I do like that it's got extra health benefits. So when I'm canning and pickling, I'm also having to boil that either in a pressure canner or in a water bath canner. And I don't know the actual stats on that, but I feel like I'm probably killing off some of the good with the bad when I'm boiling things away for, sometimes the stuff's in the pressure canner for an hour.
Right.
Sorry. So I feel like there's the possibility I'm killing off some of the good bacteria with the bad.
Right. And that's
Whereas I
just
feel like with the fermenting, I'm just keeping it all good. It's just all delicious. It's all good. All your health benefits are staying active. I love that a fermentation is still alive versus something that's been canned is kind of stabilized. It's not changing anymore. Like you can open up a can of something today or 3 months from now and it should taste probably exactly the same. It's not
right.
really growing anymore, whereas the stuff I'm fermenting is still developing and it's still layering and it's still kind of coming into itself the whole time it's being stored, even if it's being stored in the fridge at that point. Like my
Yeah.
sauerkrauts I'm working on right now will go in the fridge tomorrow.
Nice.
So then they'll be good for the year, but they never last that long. So even if we're making Caesar salad now, I will add sauerkraut onto it because it's a great extra touch. And you're not, lettuce doesn't necessarily have a lot of health benefit by itself. It's mostly made of water. So adding that extra layer of healthiness on it and we're kind of used to it now. We actually love it.
Right. Well, and you bring up such a good point in terms because it is true, like fermentation, again, it is always that question of like from the time when one makes it, how long does it last? And interestingly enough, it's like most things when it's that good, like I I remember being very, very fortunate when I was working at Le Crocodile when I guest som, and they would have extra sauerkraut, and I would take home a large jar, a large container. You have been kind enough to give me sauerkraut for home and all that, and it never lasts that long because it's so not only delicious, it really does add a lot of flavor and a lot of health benefits to my dish. So is there a time frame that people should be concerned with if they, when they are fermenting versus preserving? Because like you say, you gave such a good explanation on really kind of what the similarities and yet differences are for it.
I mean, anytime you're dealing with preservation and fermentation, you do have to be aware there are ratios to be used and they are ratios for a reason, and you do need to keep in mind that everything needs to be sterilized. You don't want to introduce any bad bacteria at any point. Make sure your salt ratio is like, I always add an extra 0.5% just to be extra careful because you don't want to have something that goes bad. And I have had things that go bad. You can smell it right away. You can tell it's not a mystery. You're like, wow, this is really gone. My son and I when we were trying to make the dolmades the other week, and I had a jar of the grape leaves that already didn't look right. And then we opened the jar. We're like, oh, we're really not sure. But we could tell, we knew it was bad and we threw it out right away. We opened a second jar and you could tell immediately that this was a good jar and it had, you know, stabilized itself and it was not going to poison us. I mean, there is a certain careful aspect. Do your research. I had somebody text me recently and they're like, well, I did lactofermation and it's in my jars. And I stopped her immediately because when you're lactofermenting, there's a lot of off gassing happening and those jars will explode because there's nowhere for it to go. So
Right.
you have to do a bit of research and you definitely have to know a little bit what you're doing. If you're pickling, you really need the vinegar in there to preserve it. Just adding some salt to a pickle jar isn't going to cut it. That probably will go bad. If you're fermenting, you don't need that acid, but you do need the right salt content and it has to be a careful balance. Once you do your research and you understand these principles, it's really not that hard. Like the sauerkrauts, I like making them because I can make it any way I want to.
Yeah.
And for example, like beets are a superfood and they're really, really healthy for us. But how many beets can you really eat in a week? So I make a beet sauerkraut and it's delicious. And it's just raw beets that have been fermented. They're thinly sliced on the mandolin. I add in my red onions. I keep the color. You want to keep color true. So I'm using red onions, red cabbage, red beets, and then my spices. And it just sits in salt and creates its own liquid for a few days. And then if you need extra liquid, You add a salt brine to it, and voila, you can make it any flavor you want. Whatever superfood you love, whatever, it's really not hard. You don't need to be spending a fortune for the ones in the stores that also add a lot of extra preservatives, which they have to do because they're selling it to you off a grocery store shelf, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I read
And
a
then
lot of labels.
Uh,
It's terrifying.
go ahead, Noni. Amazing. Thanks.
So, the two of you use the word flavor quite a bit, and I felt the need to interject and share something because this individual loves attention and he is my greatest friend who's all about the flavor. So, Mr. Savor the Flavor Kenny says, may you all have a delectable, scrumptiously, deliciously tasty, good, heartfelt Thursday. Savor the flavor of the awesomeness in you all today.
Nice.
So just wanted
Yum.
to share just wanted to share that with you all because the two of you said the word flavor, and if I don't mention Kenny, then he will be upset with me.
And we don't want that.
We don't want Kenny to be upset with me or anybody. But the one thing that did come in again was a comment by Leslie. Beet hummus is fabulous. So just want to share that your beet salad or beet superfood is resonating with some of our listeners.
Well, and Leslie, you might even, if I don't know if you make your own hummus, it's magical when you do. It's a lot of work, but it can be frozen. So I find if I'm going to go to the trouble of something that's a lot of work, I'm going to big batch it, I'm going to freeze it, whatever. But you might be able to use um, like fermented sauerkrauted beets in the hummus to
Nice.
give it an extra layer of flavor and an extra like depth to it. You might find it to be interesting. I don't know. I've never tried it, but now I might. You
Nice.
sparked curiosity in me, Leslie. Thank you.
It sounds delicious. And it's really, for me, beets, like you say, I really enjoy them. I've talked a few times on previous episodes about, there's candy cane beets. And like you say, the red beets and how, again, it's that we should eat the rainbow of foods in order for health benefits and all of that. And something that is really interesting for me is that I'm uh, I'm always involved in UNESCO, the UNESCO World Heritage with regards to wine regions, but also with food. And interestingly enough, because borscht is kind of was one of my favorite things to have when I lived in Thunder Bay. I don't talk a lot about it, but in the winter, always was kind of my favorite. So I not only love what you say, Leslie, about beet hummus and what you're saying, Allison. It's like I'm curious to see how that works if you do try it, and it makes me want to experiment in my kitchen, which I don't do often enough.
Yeah, I mean, once you've taken the time to create a few little ferments of your favorite ingredients, like we go through tomatoes a lot, so I always have them on hand. It just adds a lot of depth to your dishes that you're already making. You can just substitute them in for where you would just have normal tomatoes or like fermented beets, or if you eat a lot of lemons, which I do, you can add in some preserved lemon instead once in a while. And so you're getting all those good little gut microbes happening, and you're activating your stomach acids, and you're still eating foods you love. And now those foods you love have a whole new depth to them that you never maybe thought was possible. It's kind of a cool journey. I mean, there's a lot more to it than I can even figure out in a hot moment, but it'll give me a project for the next 10 years, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's just it. Is some can would you say that some of your favorite dishes, some of your favorite meals, and some of your, again with fermentation and all of that, some of what you've created, your shrubs and everything, did they come from inquisitiveness? Did they come from just out and out having too much, or just being like, oh, need to do this, and something happened the right way or a different way? Because I find a lot of times with food, then it happens because of a necessity, sometimes that necessity is from a mistake, or sometimes that results in a mistake. And then we find we actually have something even better that is more enjoyable from it.
Yeah, I think it's kind of come from a combination, like when something's in season, it's just in abundance and it's the cheapest at the market. And so, how do I make the most of that opportunity? I have people sometimes just drop off at my front door, people I know, but like drop off at my front door just flats of extra food that, they own a grocery or they have a farm or whatever. And they're like, we just had so many extra. Somebody dropped off once, like 2 flats of mangoes. I'm like, well, what am I gonna do with 2 flats of mangoes now? So then you get on the internet, and it's like, okay, long term, how can I ferment these? Shorter term, how can I maybe pickle them? Immediately, how can I make a sauce with them, or like I don't know, a mango hot sauce or whatever, right? So then you kind of come into this little space and time. I have, as you can probably imagine, between my son and I, we probably have, we're getting in the hundreds of cookbooks. It's
Right.
getting a bit ridiculous, but a very valuable resource I found was a website called Eat Your Books. It's a membership one. I think it's just like $5 or something. But anyways, you can input into it all the books that you already own. And then when you're trying to research something, for example, beets, you just
Mhm.
type in beets and it'll show you in all the books you already own which recipes might be most useful to you. But what I use it for is it shows all the ingredients. So then I can get ingredient ideas. So I'm like, okay, I've got 2,000 mangoes. What am I going to do? I'll put in mango and I'll be like, oh, it didn't even occur to me that vegetable A and B would go with mango so well. So now I can make my own recipes, whether I'm making ferments or canning things or whatever. So it's kind of a useful resource when you're getting really kind of food curious that way. But it helps with when you're trying to make a new ferment or a new pickled idea or whatever. You don't have to just do the same boring things that have been done for centuries. You can really rev it up and do cool stuff.
Absolutely. No, it's fantastic. Well, and you mentioned mangoes, which I know are kind of I think a bit of a favorite for most people and all that. And it's really interesting because again, the I've I've only just rediscovered my enjoyment of dried mangoes and dried fruits and all of that in terms, because I have a bit of a sweet tooth sometimes. And so I'm trying to get away from that. So the dried or preserved mangoes and banana chips and all of that, just because they're good for snacking on. And are there any, because I know, like, as you say, fermentation versus preservation, fermentation really, it's become a big part of our lives in the food and wine world. Wine, of course, because that's how wine is created. And again, I would do an entire episode on just fermentation of wine and alcohol, spirits, and all that at a later time. But are there foods that you find that have lent more towards fermentation or more towards preservation? That, because I know what you mean. You want to add the good gut biome, you want to add the good health benefits to your food. And fermentation is really more food that's alive almost because of the way everything works. Preservation is to make sure that it lasts more. So my grandmother, she would always do the canning, do the jamming and, jams and jellies and preserving and all of that. So we had all of that, she would do it throughout the summer or fall. And then we would have that in our pantry to be able to go through for having really vibrant and yet food that was going to last throughout the winter, the harder season where it's like -40 and cold and snow and all that kind of stuff. And you may or may not be able to get out to a grocery store in itself.
Yeah.
But are there any foods that you find that you're cooking with, or that you're wanting to cook with or experiment with on either side?
I mean, the whole conversation of preserving food, there's just infinite numbers of ways to preserve food from dry aging. I've made my own little dry aging fridge for big cuts of beef, and then you can dry age it and make your own dried steaks and whatever. There's like dehydrating, like you mentioned, freeze drying, which my sister's been heavily into, just freezing. Like all of these are preservation methods, and they all do something different. And they're all useful, mostly useful for different foods. But fermenting, I think, is the one that remains alive. The rest of these kind of stop a food dead in its tracks at a specific point in its food life and in its nutritional value.
Yeah.
So when I'm dry aging beef, I don't know that I'm really adding any nutritional value to it, but I'm adding a layer of really cool funk that's delicious. And then with the offcuts, which is basically like meat mold, but I guess in a way that you eat the mold on the cheese, right? So it's not necessarily bad. It just sounds bad.
Yeah.
But I made one of the most amazing gravies I've ever tasted in my entire life just from the offcuts from the meat that I had dry aged. So, I mean, the world is just your oyster. You can do so many different things. If you love your dried mangoes, for example, you can find a dehydrator for probably $50 on Amazon. They're not expensive, but then you can do your own fruits a, when they're in season, or B, without as much sugar as you're gonna find when you buy them at the store.
Right.
So you can control your ingredients, you can control your flavors, and for the cost of just dehydrating, oh gosh, I just dehydrated the other day. What did I do? Oh, the lemon balm in the garden is just a weed, like it is uncontrollable. But I picked a whole bunch of the lemon balm and I just put it in the dehydrator with some lemon rind and I made my own tea. And it's just, like, growing in abundance in the garden, and I thought, "Why not? I'll try it." It's not my favorite yet, I gotta work on it a bit. I might add some mint to it, so I might make it a mint and lemon balm tea. You gotta play with it a little bit until it makes your soul happy. But, I mean, it's growing here anyway, so I either get it chopped down at the end of the season or I do something with it. For a $50 dehydrator, we're making tea.
Brilliant. We all love tea. I know, and it's in Northern Hemisphere. We're definitely going into that time period from iced tea to hot tea. I think that's absolutely fantastic. I wanted to put it back over to you, Noni. I know we're coming to the end of our hour. It's gone by quickly, but back over to you because I wanted to find out if you had any conversation, comments, and how our audience, if they have any questions.
As far as audience, I've been watching and making sure that all the comments are syncing. But for now, we're good. We don't have any further comments. But no, we literally have 2 minutes left till the end of the hour, and I just wanted to share my many thanks to Allison for taking the time out of her busy schedule, whether it's busy fermenting, preserving, or traveling, or cooking, or whatever you're doing, to come join us and tell us more about fermentation and preservation and giving us the wealth of knowledge that you possess. Just wanted to let you know that it's from the bottom of my heart, very much appreciated. And of course, Teresa, you're a networking genius, and thank you for bringing in Allison as your friend for educating all of us today. Um, we literally have 1 minute left, so I want to give that 1 minute back to the two of you to ensure that if there's any tips that you want to share regarding fermentation, please do so, and then we will go ahead and close out the room for the day.
Absolutely. Allison, I'm just going to say a quick Noni thank you as always. Thank you to the audience. And Allison, thank you for your time. And it's even more so a conversation that I have not only wanted to have. I think that we look forward to more. And definitely, please let us know what from what Noni said. I'm curious too.
I mean, my last comment would just be do your research, but go out and ferment all the things. I mean, it's a journey. It's a living, breathing, vibing journey, and it's a lot of fun. And it's actually quite easy to get started into. So once you've got your key ratios, your key components down, go for it. Get creative. Get creative in the kitchen.
Getting creative is the best way. Absolutely. Again, speaking of that, because this was a creative, collaborative conversation. So really appreciate your time, knowledge, experience, and where can we find you, so that if people do have any questions, then please let us know. And then back over to you.
Yeah, I mean, you can find me at thehomekitchen.com, or I live a lot on Instagram. So at AK underscore the home kitchen. You always
Perfect.
find me there.
Back over to you, Noni. Thank you so much, ladies.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you once again, Allison, and thank you, Teresa. I appreciate you sharing your friendships and your professional connections with us to educate us and everyone else watching. But I do want to thank both of you for your time. I appreciate you, and I hope, Allison, we get to connect some other time for another topic and where you can share your expertise. That would be greatly appreciated.
Thank
And
you.
if there's any topic that anyone in the audience would like to explore, or for us to bring a guest who focuses on that particular topic, please do let us know. And then we'd be more than happy to do our research and bring in some qualified individuals, such as Allison, to discuss more on those particular topics of interest. So, with that being said, thank you, every single human being who attended, not only just the guests and speakers, but audience as well. Appreciate your support and hope to see you all next week, same time, same place. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful long weekend. Especially, I don't know about Canada, but in the United States, we have a long 3-day weekend. So, have a wonderful one. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Have a great weekend or a long weekend. Bye.